Okay, cloud repatriation means moving data and the workload back from the cloud to different kind of on-premises setup. That could be private cloud, colocation, or servers you own. There is a trend stated from a couple of independent reports stating that many enterprises, mainly in US, are thinking to move to do this repatriation job. I would say that in US, this movement is mainly driven by cost reduction needs. Basically, the attempt to reduce the impact of cloud costs on the revenues, which is getting bigger and bigger, especially in situation where the companies need to store and manage really huge quantity of data. Dropbox, for example, they moved in 2016 back to on-prem. Magic Pocket, 37 Signals, other companies. In Europe now, with the current posture of geopolitical posture of US, probably this movement is mainly driven by data protection, data sovereignty in general, because probably the cost factors are not perceived totally prohibitive like it's happening in the US. The strategy, in general, what could be a strategy for deciding when to move back to repatriate? I would say the strategy should be mainly cost and compliance driven. You have to list your workloads, understand precisely the cost of running this service in cloud, and trying to find alternatives and try to measure in a precise way the gain you could get. So in this specific context, FinOps, it's extremely important because you need a very good strategy. First, for exactly measuring what you are doing in your cloud, but also before attempting to move back, maybe really worth the effort to try to minimize the cost you are experiencing on the cloud. I would say that in moving the repatriation is not abandoning the cloud straight away, but trying to find a natural compromise. No, for example, if part of your workload need the elasticity of cloud, why not? Why not choosing a hybrid setup where loads that need to be scaled quickly can stay in the cloud, and everything else, or maybe big data platform or more static kind of workload, they could go back on-prem. So I would say hybrid should be the normal choice. I wouldn't suggest to move back completely from the cloud to on-prem, because probably it's moving from an extreme to another. The typical story, okay, it's the OPEX versus CAPEX, no? And typically the financial people, they prefer OPEX versus CAPEX. But I would say there is a threshold above which this is not it's not convenient anymore. No, this especially for big static infrastructure, like setting up a data platform. Typically, big data means constantly adding new data. It's typically a big data platform is not elastic by definition. So you start to store data, and you start to accumulate this data year by year, and with an increasing cost. At some point, this cost could be really too much, and then this is the point, this could be the trigger when you could start to find an alternative. Try to understand if repatriation could be the right strategy for cost reduction. Very often it's a scale problem, because, for example, spending $1,000 per month or $2,000 per month doesn't make such a big difference. Spending $1 million per month and $2 million per month, that could be a much higher impact, no, on your cost. Okay. Other rule of thumb, probably moving back, repatriate only for saving half of the cost, maybe it's not. It doesn't worth the effort. Above 2 times, I think you should consider this option. In general, everything else, like microservices, everything where the elasticity could be a real advantage. I would say for this kind of workload, the cloud is perfect. Typically, this kind of workload, they don't need too much computing power, so you can quickly scale up and down your microservices, your service infrastructure with a reasonable cost. So again, this is the typical situation where an hybrid setup, it's definitely the best option. Okay, data gravity means, big data attracts compute. So the point is keeping the computing power close to the data. For a big data setup, this is the only option available. For example, it doesn't make any sense to have the computing power on-prem and the storage in cloud, because the latency, the network, the egress cost would be too prohibitive. So in this specific case, it's a choice. Either you keep everything in cloud or on-prem. Then other consideration could be where the data is created. So if you have all the services running in cloud, and all these services are the data sources, you should take into account the cost for moving the information, the data from the cloud to the big data setup, setting somewhere else, like on your data center. So the location definitely matter. So again, for big static data platforms, the repatriation, it's definitely could be a very nice, cheaper option. For edge computing, for collecting data, if you need to do like IoT kind of applications, this kind of stuff, microservices, etc. I think cloud is still competitive, comparing the easiness to set up stuff, the scalability, etc. Okay, this is very interesting. This is probably something which affects only Europe, because this specific context, the compliance, the privacy protection in US and Europe, they are following different rules. In US legislation, they added two laws that basically allow the government and the US intelligence agencies to access all the cloud data, regardless where the data is sitting. So, for example, even if you choose a European region that theoretically should be under the GDPR or all the European rules, theoretically the NSA or an American agency can access and look around your data without warning you, without asking any permission from you. This is definitely against the European rules. Then there is the FISA 702, which is a law that provides a great deal of power to the intelligence agency. So basically, they can monitor foreign communications, even through US tech companies. So the fact that the public cloud providers are American companies basically allow the intelligence agencies to monitor the communication inside the cloud without any permission. Okay, and this again, it's another leak in the architecture, the privacy architecture, the privacy European architecture. It's mostly unknown by many people. So this really depends on the level of awareness of these two laws, and at which extent the people want to risk the fact that US government or agency can look around or eventually read something relevant from the intellectual properties point of view. But in general, I would say, taking into account these aspects, it's pretty important from the compliant point of view, because it could happen that at some point, the European regulator could decide, okay, public cloud can be used only when any kind of citizen data is involved. The other point, okay, companies that need to protect, to have a strict control on the intellectual properties, or strategic company, etc., they should be a bit careful, no, before to embrace critically the adoption of the cloud for specific kind of applications. No? Again, in this specific case, hybrid, it's the strategy, because in cloud you could keep things that are not relevant from the privacy, data security, sovereignty standpoint, and everything else could be protected and then sitting in your data center or private cloud owned by a European company. Okay, so basically avoiding as much as possible lock-in. It's a matter of freedom, because if you are free to choose different kind of cloud providers, because it's another kind of freedom, because you could being free to choose between cloud provider A and cloud provider B, it's a matter of freedom, because you can negotiate better prices, for example. It's another FinOps strategy, no, for cost reduction. Being free from lock-in means embracing open standards, for example, standard data formats, Parquet, Iceberg, just a couple of examples. Trying to use a cloud-native approach, no? Kubernetes everywhere as a sort of universal deployment infrastructure, because Kubernetes, it's almost the same regardless of the physical infrastructure below. So if you base the deployment of your application, your data platform, etc., based on Kubernetes, I think you could reach a good level of deployment independency without too much complexity. Okay, you can still use some managed services. Using, for example, managed databases, it's okay, because Postgres is the same everywhere, regardless if it's managed by a cloud provider or running inside your data center. It's an example. So again, in the collection of managed services, try to choose the one that tend to use open standards, like databases. It's fine to use Kafka, because Kafka, you can choose the managed Kafka, but moving from the managed one to a self-managed one, there is no a big lock-in, at least from the application standpoint. So just to make the story short, it's try to build your overall infrastructure on open standards as much as possible. It's a natural strategy for keeping the lock-in at a manageable level. My opinion, the AI, especially the generative AI that needs a lot of computing power, it's somehow accelerating this movement, because the cost of GPUs in cloud, it's very, very high. And the problem of keeping secret your intellectual properties is getting more and more a need in the big enterprises, because if you want to implement RAG, any kind of RAG, or using generative AI for managing your own information, somehow delegating, running the model, no, and using the models as API managed by an American companies, you are automatically under the Cloud Act and the FISA 702 laws. Okay, again, you have the problem. Strangely enough, this problem is more perceived on the generative AI side. So the people starting to use models in software as a service or platform as a service fashion are starting to realize, oh, I'm sending my document via APIs to another to a site owned by an American companies. So the concerns are still the same, are the same of the big data infrastructure. I would say they're a bit bigger because the cost for the GPUs it's really, really high in cloud, and managing the GPUs or on your premises, or using private cloud, or renting GPUs on specialized providers, you can really save a lot of money from this standpoint. And then additionally, for the GPUs, it's plenty of options. Also, small providers on a European scale, there are pretty big one. And then again, you could still choose the cloud approach, but you can buy the GPU computing from a European company where we have plenty of options as an alternative to the traditional American public cloud providers. Thank you. Thanks for your time. I hope what I said is going to be useful for your choices.